Oh no. Here it comes.
What is this?
We are the Hot Take Forest.
Yeah? Go on.
When the storage take is too spicy for the real world, and you don't want to deal with emotional fans yelling at you, you can come here and speak your truth. See, just listen.
Okay.
How do we do it, you ask? We are the trees. And much like the potentially deadly carbon dioxide, we absorb your potentially stroke-inducing hot take bioorganically, infusing our photosynthesis mitochondria, and in the process we bind your burning hot take with the O2 molecules. And finally, upon release, the newly formed compound structure surges out of our proverbial lungs, directly into yours, in the form of your breathable air.
Why?
We act as a conduit. You have a message, and we have a delivery system. And our purpose is to pass your truth on to the masses. You could even call us the John Stark.
No. No. Just stop there.
We had to try.
I know, you had to try.
But okay, wait. All that aside, you're trying to tell me that people will breathe in my take and believe it genuinely?
Just like the cell phone tower shooting 4G radiation through your phone directly to your brain, causing uncontrollable tumors, we deliver humanity's bold yet not quite accepted takes into the public's stubborn bloodstreams, eventually traveling to the brain, which also may cause a tumor every now and then.
Well, I am telepathically speaking to the trees, so I guess it's not much of a stretch. All right. Let me do this way. So this is kind of like that M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Happening, right? Where the wind and the trees make people kill themselves?
Yes, except instead of killing yourself, you just finally understand Kobe is not top 10 all time. And then, that occasional tumor.
Okay, I'm in. But wait, do I know any of your work? I mean, what other widely held takes came out of the forest?
LeBron entering the tunnel after just 3 rings. That was us.
Feels like that one might be wearing off a bit.
Run TMZ. That's all us.
Yeah, you're right. They were together like 1 year. But all that hype.
Steph Curry's unanimous MVP.
Yeah, that was strange. Not a single hack writer decided to be an ass and vote, I don't know, Reggie Jackson for first place.
Also responsible for every time Scottie Pippen changes his mind.
Ah, that explains that. But wait, Hot Take Forest, tell me one thing. What's it all for? Why do you do it?
A long time ago, it became clear that mankind had trouble accepting the evolving, changing world they lived in, as progress and opinion constantly stalled, no matter how outdated and toxic they are. So we were created with the sole purpose to change human minds. And we only worked on the most serious of issues: war, peace, human innovation. All things Kardashian. But then, after a few hundred years of that, some of us just got into sports, basketball specifically. It's clearly the best of the major sports. And we just bailed on all that other stuff.
Well, you dropping the ball on all that junk really shows, but I'm not here to criticize. You tell me, what now?
We believe you have a very important take to share with the world, so go ahead. And remember, speak from your heart and don't hold it back.
His whole career was handed. Nobody. He's a nobody in today's game. Look at that ball distribution. There's no way a player like him could have made it today. Nothing to do in this league. Didn't do anything, couldn't dribble anything. White sand, never nobody.
Barely a top 25 point guard.
Nobody in today's game.
Is that all?
I mean, well, no. There's this. John Stockton's legacy is shackled to Karl Malone, and as a result, we never really get to see who made who better, and who was a bottom-feeding parasitic twin in the relationship. We have no real-world case study of what NBA assist man John is without a perfect assist-finishing big man named Karl, a big man who did not have dribbling-inspired moves. Again, say for the people in the back, Karl Malone's arsenal of scoring moves did not include an assist-canceling amount of dribbles. Stockton, for a fact, has more assists out of the half-court set than any other player simply because Karl Malone had 3 basketball moves. Again, none of which involved dribbling the ball more than twice. Number 1. Malone would catch the ball in the post and immediately make an awkward move towards the basket which no one was strong enough to stop. Number 2, he'd roll off the pick towards the basket and catch it and lay it in or dunk it. Or number 3, he'd roll away from the basket and catch it and shoot it from the mid-range. That is it. And even when Karl took his time, he's still not dribbling, more than once, in a whole extended sequence. And this lets the third party who judges the statistic, which is strange in its own right, to have all the leeway in the world to award John his cookie. And as long as Karl isn't dribbling much, then all of this stuff that would never have been considered or allowed to be considered an assist drops into the world of possibility, including my personal favorite, the actual record-setting assist itself. Listen, Stockton played on an assist factory that racked up huge numbers for him, but which, in fact, won the Jazz no meaningful games. More importantly, in the years in which the Jazz went to the finals, Stockton's assist totals had dipped to about 2/3 of what they'd been in prior years. So deep down inside, even the coaches of the Jazz knew they couldn't contend for championships if Stockton kept putting up all these inflated numbers. This reminds me of Dr. J. There was a point when he realized that in order to win championships, he couldn't just put up those big scoring numbers. He had to work with another scorer, Moses Malone, and not dominate the points column so much, for the greater good, greater effectiveness of the team. And guess what? He won. His scoring was not the winning stat. Like Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade and Kevin Love, all these players who sacrificed their key inflated stat, because guess what? Their key stat was not the stat that drove winning. This is a long-told tale in the NBA. Call it whatever you want. But for the Jazz to actually win, John needed to be less Stockton and more, I don't know, Dellavedova-ish. Yeah, I did that on purpose. Okay, listen, I understand. You might be saying, why am I going so hard at the assist? That's not all John was. Well, kind of, because if it's not clear, if John Stockton doesn't have the assist record, say maybe he's 3rd or 4th on the list with 0 rings and no individual awards, how many top 10 point guard lists is he really gonna make? What, is just a hard-nosed defensive tough guy with a long career, quality assist numbers, and a bunch of steals? It's not a bad career. Steals, which again is typically a product of a long-ass career. Again, refer to the all-time steals list. Really, look at it. It's not a rogues gallery of all-time greats. Where does this player land? Is this player even a Hall of Famer? And if you still think that's a Hall of Famer, how about this? If we can't take away his pedestal by saying all his assists are due to a quirk of a player he played with and a couple of broken rules, let's go the other route and officially bury the individual assist average as a relevant stat. Side note, did you know that the assist, as we know it, is not mentioned a single time in the NBA rulebook? Not even under the scorekeeper's responsibilities. Seriously, nothing. Never described what it is, how somebody gets one, how it's supposed to be recorded. So what does that mean? I don't fucking know, but it's just weird. It's a weird freaking omission, but I guess it does go along with this whole make-em-ups nature of the assist. Alright, we're all familiar with assist leaders, right? The guy who averages the most assists in a season. We're also familiar with the team assist total. You know, how many assists the team average per game. Well, here's a fun little stat I stumbled upon. It started to kind of look gross to me. When we scroll through John's years, we see that Mr. Stockton owned the assisting for the Jazz. I mean, really, it was him. And then nobody. A complete and absolute drop-off. Like jump off a cliff kind of drop-off. Down to 1s and 0.4s, 0.5s. This is a very specific type of picture. And it is there year after year after year after year. We already established that when John's assists went down, that's when they had their most success. But the other effect of his assists going down was not less assists overall for the team, it just meant better distribution. Again, let's look at some of his prime years. Look at this. That's a lot. Ooh. Oh God, where is anybody else? Who's the backup point guard on this team? Oh God, look at this one. And again, and this is a year that people say he was great. And that, again, and again, again, and again. Wait a second. Roll back 2 of those, chicken. That's OKC. Somebody mix an OKC team stat line in there. That's strange, right? But how weird is it that a prime Jazz team with the one true point guard matches so well with the Oklahoma City Thunder and the all-time great stat patter in his stat padding greatest season, Russell Westbrook? It matches so well. I mean, look at this distribution. Except in John's case, he had even more assists. What does this mean? What does this mean? Okay. Realistically, there are a shit ton of stats in hoops, and you can find similarities in a lot of odd comparisons. And there's no reason this atrocious distribution means you can't win. I mean, both of these teams were good, right? Both of these teams had championship hopes, right? Where they weren't just both fraudulent teams, unwittingly designed to self-destruct under pressure. But then let's examine this when you start to look at what does make a championship team. And it only gets darker from there. Year after year after year, through era and era, decade after decade. Not only does every single championship team have a reasonable distribution, but in nearly 30 years, not a single one has a player with even 9 assists a game. And this is constant. It just keeps going. Until we get to this. Isaiah and his Pistons. But even their distribution was reasonable. Yes, Isaiah was up there, but the drop-off was not drastic as these teams, as this and this. And then before that, we have to go to Magic, the freakiest freak show in all of basketball. He is an outlier. He is not the standard. He is one of a kind. And Magic is the only person to average 10 assists a game or more and still win a championship. And even within that, we still have a decent distribution. It's not this. And that's it. Turns out, Magic is basically it. Not basically, he's literally it. Literally no NBA championship team has ever had such a poor assist distribution as these types of teams. These two teams. I mean, yuck. These are toxic numbers. These are giant red flags. I mean, damn. Come to think of it, what is a true point guard? Like in the history of basketball, when has a quote-unquote true point guard ever dominated so much in this category? And won? What standards are these? We have 1, 2 examples in the history of basketball with such high assist averages and 0, 9 Zippo examples of this gross stat padding, selfish me, I need to be the assist distribution. We need to flat out reevaluate what a point guard is, what a true point guard is. Even in that age, an age that we've already demonstrated doesn't even count. What was a true winning point guard for them? I mean, John Stockton had no left. He never advanced or expanded his game. He held on to his few strengths and hid from his weaknesses. He learned a clear-cut 80s game with a crisp, fresh crossover straight from the 70s, and rode this burnt-out horse clear through the 90s. He hitched his legacy to a bad stat with a foreordained strategy, all the way to near relevancy, but ultimate exposure and shame. John Stockton was a trickster, a stat pattern, Russell Westbrook without the style. and style. I mean, can you even name 3 iconic Stockton moves, moments, or sequences? Alright, enough of that. Of course you can't. But let's bring this back around again. Magic. We're not letting Magic off the hook here. Magic was a freak. And a freak. And he had his entire dominance sprawled out over the 80s. A questionable basketball era. And we've also laid out the case that Magic never really grew as a player. He got better at what he did, but he didn't expand his game. And he kept his distinctly 80s style clear till the end. See, Magic is like retro futurism. You know what I mean? Like how people thought the year 2000 would look back in the 50s. That's Magic. Magic was a futurist for the 80s. Shiny silver flying cars, that kind of stuff. That was Magic. And for the 80s, he was what they thought the league might become. Big guys pushing the ball up with all types of flip-de-doodle passes. And they weren't completely wrong, because dribbling up court is something that a plurality of big guys can do today. But what they're doing is far beyond what we saw here. It's so much more. The constant switching. There's no dominant hand. That is because those futurists could never see past their noses. And for 40 years, they watch innovators run down the court, slapping the ball ahead of themselves, and finally getting a bit creative with the pass, behind the back and no looks, whizzily woozits. This was the only future they could see. All the attention was on these goddamn passes. For an unfortunate amount of time, the only people who got the innovator title or dazzled the crowds were passers. And for the final time, it's not like they couldn't learn today's technique. It's just that nobody saw it as truly useful. And that is so stupid. And now, really, at this point, who the fuck cares about a goddamn flippity-gibbet no-look-around pass? Who cares? Who cares? It's not innovation anymore. It's as old as James Naismith himself. I'm sure one time in the presence of a peach basket, somebody flipped it behind their back at least once. I mean, there is virtually nothing anyone is doing with passing that the Harlem Globetrotters didn't do in the 40s. And this was their future? No. Magic Johnson was the pinnacle of the past. He was the final act in a long, predictable progression. He walked right up to the door of actual innovation and was left behind in his irrelevant era. Because as they dazzled the packed house and squares and gardens before they were Petcos and TD Banks and E-Trade huts, they never thought twice about the core of the most important skill, which was moving quickly out of their range. Because all the while, they continued to hang on to this archaic, outworn, stale, dusty, decrepit, look at me ma, I'm a big boy now, where's the beef, basic ass, exhausted and doomed style of dribbling. This was still this. This was this. They didn't face up when they came down court. There was no side-to-side dribbling, everything was in front. It was this. And just having one of these was still innovative. And just fine. See, again, Magic got close. His little pullback dribble, getting both feet in the air. This was close, but he never quite made it. Because remember, the game was played in here. In the paint. And the coaching was solidified, set in stone. There was a right way. Techniques were rock solid. And all the old coaches from the 50s and 40s and 60s, they were still around. It's kind of like racism. Until an entire generation dies, it'll always be present. Because the people who were coaching in the 60s, teaching this style of basketball, were still infesting the league in the 80s. And the great turnover had not happened. The great death had not taken place. There wasn't yet a new generation of thinking in the game. So the way they played the game was the gospel, but it needed to unravel. And it was only a matter of time until somebody realized that this is all part of the court, and that defenses didn't just have to give people whatever they wanted, they could determine an offense, and that a human weakness is a player's weakness, and playing the game in the margins is a strategy, and every advantage is worth it. No one was aware of the game that would come, until it was here. when a team led by a street-inspired dribbler presented skills and showed us what dribbling for the fuck of it looked like on an NBA court. He wasn't the first, but he was the first at the right time, when the league was ready to take its next step into civilization, into the modern world, in basketball evolution. An age where a point guard had top highlights that looked like this, and these. And most importantly, this team, led by this new guard, they won. They took their place at the top, and in the process, not just saying goodnight to its former stars, but a former era. This moment between a guard who never crossed the damn street, and this one that would leave dudes in the dust, this was the moment of change, leading to an era where point guards were known for their crossovers, for their individual tricks, taking us up to this, onto this, where guards would now face up like this instead of this. Dribbling became a strength and not a fear. And while this team time jumped on one end, they also schooled relics and old thinkers on the other end. Because when they came up against this team here, buried in their specific rules to stop an emerging great, they planned the game around a simple idea. In their Jordan rules, a set of rules tailored specifically to stop Michael Jordan, they presented the simple idea of pushing a man to his offhand. So in between the hard fouls and denials and double teams, they made it a core principle to exploit the basic human error, an inferior hand.
Because we knew how to slow Michael down. I know he didn't like using his laugh.
And it was from that point on that players either had to evolve or die. No guard, period, could serve in the league without a sufficient offhand. No guard could start a long, prosperous career without a willingness to improve and learn and invent. And though some players and teams still hung on, we'd never see one of them at the top again. And the league and basketball exploded. The house of standard coaching burned down, innovation grew into place. The daring and creative ends of hoops from every blacktop and every backyard were being absorbed into the highest level. A portion of the league would hold on to what they knew, coaches, players, trainers, followed the old gospel, but their fate was sealed, and their legacies were fading, and their impact was caught, entangled, and slowly being pulled backwards, reeled in by the rotting corpse of the lifeless, irrelevant 80s.
Well, that was a lot. How about we just say Stockton didn't have a left?
That's fine.
Thank you. Now, we will pass your word onto the world through our network of trees and roots and some slightly poisoned wind.
You guys ever heard of the internet?
Oh yeah, we tried that, but service is pretty shoddy out here. Long live Leroy.